Hello and welcome to SBK Unplugged, Sheldon Bosley Knight's Land Owned Property podcast. My name is Kate Gould and I'm the host of the show. Today I am in the studio with our Lettings Director, Rebecca Dean, and Senior Lettings Manager, Josh Jones. Welcome to you both. Before we start, I'd like to say a big thank you again to Mill Street for hosting us in their amazing studio. Thank you very much, guys. So, Josh, welcome to the studio, your first time, and nice to see you again, Becca. Lovely to see you both. Yeah. Once again, Renters' Rights Bill. So it's gone through the House of Lords now, and it's got to go back to the House of Commons, but it won't be until September. So royal assent looking more towards the autumn. Your thoughts? Where are we?
Well, I'm pleased that there is a little bit of a delay on it, I guess. Not to delay the inevitable, because we know that it's coming. But I think it just shows that there is some real thought and consideration being given over the amends, rather than just pushing this through really quickly to get it enforced, which has always been one of my concerns. So my understanding is it's back in the House of Commons on the 8th of September. Yep. Royal assent, I'm sure, will follow shortly after that. But we have been, told from the very beginning that we will have an implementation period of a couple of months. So I'm just hopeful at the moment that that is still going to be granted to give us time as agents to be able to prepare our landlords. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of work around that already over the last, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 months. I feel like the Renters' Rights Bill has been talked about for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So the work that we're doing already is already preparing our landlords. It's educating them. It's getting our teams in the mindset and getting their understanding of what's to come. But obviously there's still going to be a lot of work to do in terms of, updates, documentation changes, and making sure that we're ticking all of the right boxes and doing everything in the right way. So it's just really crucial that we still get that implementation period once royal assent has been given. So,
but there are certain sort of updates that happened during the House of Lords report stage. For example, the rent in advance, the pets situation was a big one, and the relet ban has been halved. So talk me through those key amends that have been made and what we're thinking for when it goes back to the House of Commons.
Yeah, so rent in advance, obviously this is quite a frequent thing with tenants who are international students or students, tenants that maybe can't get a suitable guarantor when that's needed, if they can't meet the referencing criteria. There are lots of different circumstances in which tenants may wish to pay the full tenancy term in advance, which could be either 6 months or 12 months. Generally, a 12-month fixed term these days is more frequent than 6. So it's a lot of money that tenants are obviously having to pay up front to landlords to secure that tenancy for that period, but also to give the landlords the peace of mind that they've got the rent if the referencing criteria can't be met. So I think there was always a concern that the landlords may have to then pay that money back once the bill is enforced. Obviously, that tenancy is going to naturally move on to a periodic. So, if a tenant's only moved in a couple of months ago and they've paid 12 months rent in advance, then that tenancy moves on to a periodic. The landlord would then have to pay potentially 9 or 10 months rent back to the tenant. The message that we've had is that that's not going to be enforced. So I think there's just question marks at the moment around what that looks like when that tenancy does go periodic. If the tenant does choose to leave and gives 2 months notice before that 12-month fixed term, or what would have been that 12-month fixed term, comes to an end, that rent is still with the landlord. So I think there's still some unanswered questions there at the moment. But the good news that we're hearing is that landlords will not be forced to pay that money back to the tenants for that period, which obviously that money has been paid to give the landlord some security.
Yeah.
There are some positive amendments that have come from the House of Lords. I mean, just on pets, you mentioned there, it's been a real hot topic over the last few years, especially since the pandemic. We've seen more and more people now have a dog or a cat. The popularity to working from home has played that part. So the big thing that the Renters' Rights Bill want to do is that they want to make it easier for tenants to have pets in properties and take away the consent from the landlords that's unreasonable in particular. So one thing that the Labour government have acknowledged openly is that there is pet damage. It does happen in properties. They do want to protect landlords but find that balance. So when it first came in initially, we saw that the Renters' Rights Bill had in there that the tenants would have to take out mandatory pet insurance. That was the first thing that Labour government initially looked at. Now, when researching that and going into it, there isn't actually a product out there such as pet insurance. You can't go to the off the shelf and take that product for a tenant. So that was then taken out, which then caused a bit of a stir with landlords. The House of Lords have proposed the amendment that the landlord can ask for a 3-week refundable deposit additional, which will enable the landlord to be covered for any pet damage. So that has been proposed, and hopefully that will give landlords more protection going forward in regards to that.
Yeah, because I think that there was originally a suggestion that the landlord would be able to take a pet insurance that would protect against damage caused by the tenant's pet. But from insurance brokers that I've spoken with and heard from, the landlord can't really claim from a policy that it's not for his pet, it's for the tenant's pet. So, and then obviously there's a situation as well that if it was the tenant's policy, they could put that in place to have the pet, but there's nothing to enforce that they keep that policy in place or don't cancel it. So, you know, lots of people have pets, and I've got, got 2 crazy Cocker Spaniels. But
the latest tenancy deposit scheme case study showed that 51% of households now have a pet. So that just shows you the pool of applicants we're dealing with. I think really, as much as we want to put stuff in place and the government needs to put protection in place, there is a lot of onus on agents to follow that really. I think the vetting of the applicant is quite key. If you get somebody who's quite well presented and comes across well, there's a good chance they represent not just their children in the property, but their pet as well. So do bear that in mind when it comes to finding applicants. And also then we've had some cases over the years where tenants have been forthcoming with pet references that we can check out. So yeah, those things are really, really important going forward. And if you speak to your local agent or Sheldon Bosley Knight team, they'll be able to talk you through and guide you through that process when it comes to pet requests going forward.
Yeah.
And so rent in advance and pets, but the relet ban as well. I know you wanted to say a few words about that.
Yeah, I mean, this one I think is very, very good news for landlords, because I think one of the concerns that we've had for landlords, and it does happen, is landlords do they serve notice on the tenant, take the property back because they've decided that now is the time to sell, and then 3-4 months down the line they haven't got a buyer or a sale has collapsed, and they need to relet the property. So the original bill or the draft bill did suggest that a landlord wouldn't be able to relet the property for a 12-month period, which is obviously a long time to have an empty property, to bear the costs. You know, if there's a mortgage, obviously it's keeping the property insured. There are some situations around insurance where if it goes over a certain period, the insurance then, the premium becomes higher or the insurance becomes void. So that's a concern for landlords, as well as the fact that council tax has to be paid. If it's during the winter months, you've got to be paying to heat the property. You've got standing charges anyway on gas and electricity. So there's all of these additional costs to a landlord when the property is sitting empty. So the news that we've had is that that relet ban will be halved, or it will be cut in half, and it would just be 6 months. But my understanding is at the moment that it's only if the landlord had made a decision to sell the property.
Right.
So obviously there are going to be 2 different grounds under the Section 8 that the landlord can use to take the property back if they either wish to sell the property or wish for a family member to move in. So our understanding at the moment is that the ban will only be halved for a landlord wanting to sell the property. But it is good news because, you know, it does give them that freedom to move forward again with finding a new tenant if their plans don't work out. You know, I think a lot of landlords probably plan to have 3, 4, maybe up to 6 months covered in terms of costs. As soon as you start going over that and you haven't got a buyer or a sale has collapsed and you've got an empty property, they need to do something with it again. So I think landlords will be making their decision wisely, knowing that they can't relet for even 6 months. Selling the property will have to be the right thing for them at that time. But at least we know that if that does then change, the property can be relet after 6 months and they don't have to have it sat empty for 12 months.
Yeah.
So I think another concern around that is the amount of empty property that we will have in our areas. If a landlord can't sell, or if you've got a landlord that wants to move back into a property or move a relative in, and then those plans change again, that 12-month restriction on not being able to relet the property means it is sitting empty, and we've got tenants wanting to move in. Tenant demand is still incredibly high.
I was going to say,
and there's going to be all these empty properties that we can't relet. So
I was going to say that we're constantly hearing about the demand and supply imbalance. There are so many more tenants for the properties available. So it doesn't make sense for a property to sit empty for 12 months, does it?
Well, just look at the rental situation of the last few years. Okay, rental prices have soared. They've increased quite a lot, quite drastically actually. And that is, yes, tenant demand is still really strong, but a lot of that's down to supply. Okay, and the Renters' Rights Bill, especially with the 12-month situation with landlords who are selling, it lacked flexibility. So yes, it's given us more flexibility. We'd ideally want as much as we can have, but I think that is a positive amendment from the House of Lords that hopefully landlords can take going forward. So speak to your Shannon Bolte Knight team again in regards to that, because we've got quite a good flexibility between sales to lettings as well. So it can be quite a quick transition. So when that 6-month point does come, we can go, right, okay, let's crack on with the letting side if needs be.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
And because of that as well, because of the sales and lettings relationship and the two teams working together within our branches, it means that there is regular communication between the two teams on what's happening with the property, and obviously opportunities to be able to reach out to the client and see how things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked before about what you both and your teams are doing to help landlords and their tenants. So just remind us what you're doing, beavering away behind the scenes to support your landlords and tenants in this sort of transition phase while we wait for royal assent to happen.
I'll let you take the lead on this one, Josh.
Yeah, well, I think how long we got? That's probably the first thing. So, look, let's talk about some of the basic things first. Okay, we just spoke about property prices. Okay, so yearly rent reviews are really, really important at the moment. Okay, landlords. Ultimately, their property is an investment. It's an asset that they need to maintain. I spoke earlier about yearly price rentals, or rental prices, the other way around, in the market recently over the last few years have increased quite a lot. Okay, so it's important the landlord does maintain their property in line with market value. So the yearly rent reviews are quite key for that. Now, when it comes to a tenant situation and their current rental price they're paying at the moment, we have to make sure that we're monitoring that and making sure that is close to market value. Actually doing yearly rent reviews helps not just the landlord, but also the tenants as well. Okay,
Yeah.
Tenants can plan a lot better when it comes to a yearly smaller rent review, and they can accept that a lot easier than maybe a landlord who initially thinks, "Oh, we'll keep the price the same because they're a good tenant." Sees the property price goes and increases, they go, "Oh God, we need to catch up with that." So then they put a large hike, which means that the tenants can't accept that and they can't deal with that as well. So there's actually a negative when they go with the price hike and leave it the same for a while. If they do that smaller review, then naturally then they'll have a better chance of stronger tenant retention. It really, Kate, is about finding the balance between the two. Okay, we want to keep good tenants in properties.
Yeah.
We want to help with that. We also want to make sure that landlords achieve a strong rental return and a strong yield on their property. So the local market expert and the local agent will be able to find that balance. So yeah, yearly rent reviews is really, really important. The inspections are probably as important as ever at the moment as well. We've got our property management teams who go out every 6 months and sometimes even sooner in some cases, where they're constantly doing a report, checking everything's in line with what needs to be in terms of renting the properties, and then feeding it back to landlords so they can not just maintain their properties, but also keep up to date of how their tenancies are going. So I can probably talk for quite a while about it. I would speak quickly about compliance.
I think it's just recognising it is the landlord's investment, isn't it? So if you've got a tenant that's been in a property for 2-3 years, naturally over that period, works are going to need to be done. Not necessarily maintenance that's reported, but it might be redecoration. It might be that a carpet needs to be changed. It might be that there's some improvements needed to a bathroom or a kitchen. And I think there's a general concern over, that initial spend, and then also for the tenant on the rent increasing. But it's all to protect the landlord's investment and make sure that the property is being kept up to a good standard. but also to make sure that the tenant then has a good quality property to live in. So it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I suppose also with the decent home standard that the government is bringing in as part of the Renters' Rights Bill, that's going to be really important.
Absolutely.
So they'll have to factor that in.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, back on just onto properties. I'm a firm believer in good quality properties attract good quality tenants.
Yeah.
So our landlords should be of that ethos and mindset really going forwards. Not just that as well, but as Becca said about the maintaining during the tenancy, that helps create a strong working relationship with landlords, and you do tend to find that tenancies do last longer when you've got that. So yeah, no, it's really, really important, and our property management teams are really onto that and help guiding our landlords through their tenancies. So
Yeah. So I'd say compliance is another one that I know you wanted to
compliance
talk about.
Yeah. So it's a strong
Lettings
word.
minefield. Yeah, absolutely.
It's probably why a lot of us are in a job, though, if we're being honest. I mean, compliance it's a big word. I mean, landlords have over 400 pieces of rules and regulations they need to abide by, which for the standard working landlord, it's just not possible. We've got lives, we've got work, we've got pets, as we spoke about, we've got kids that we have to focus on. So for a landlord to stick and focus to that is hard. It's really difficult, and that's why they employ an agent to go with. Now, in terms of what the agents do, I mean, we've already got the legislation in place. We're about to get even more with the Renters' Rights Bill. Okay, so it's really important that the landlord has a high quality expert agent in their field to guide them through that process, and not just inform them about any changes, but talk about how we're going to deal with it. I mean, just look at what we're doing at the moment, guys. Okay, we've got our in-house branches that our letting experts are in there to talk through. We've got our regular landlord times going out to landlords so they're fully aware. We've got a landlord and investor evening in September. That's really, really important for landlords to come along and not just see what changes are coming in, but work with us to see how we can deal with those changes. So, compliance is a strong word, but it's a word that we take on board and we do our best to help with. So,
And I guess, if you're a landlord, having a good agent behind you who can help guide you through all the legislation and the compliance. I mean, you mentioned all those things that they need to be aware of. It's not just simply a gas safety certificate or, making sure that the plugs are wired properly. It's really important. So to take that worry away from them is really
absolutely
worth your weight in gold, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's why we've got specialists in each area of the business, the business as a whole, but obviously just looking at lettings. My job, obviously, as the lettings director is to make sure that the managers are running the branches and the teams correctly, and that we are ticking off all of the boxes, making sure that the landlord remains compliant, making sure that we're compliant as a business. Obviously, that filters down to the teams, which helps them with their career, their journey, because most of our employees have got one and they've got a goal of where they want to get to and what they want next. So it is all about educating, whether that's educating landlords, whether it's educating the staff. Obviously, the two do go hand in hand, but we're keen as a business to make sure that the teams know as much as they can about everything, so that they can all speak to landlords, they can all have good conversations. We don't want people taking messages and having to pass it on to a manager to get a question answered. We want all of the teams to be able to be knowledgeable and then confident in what they're talking about. And everybody's on a journey. There are some members of staff that are further along than others, but that's all really, really important, whether you are, a lettings negotiator, a property manager, a coordinator, a senior lettings manager. It's important that the teams have got all of the knowledge, which builds their confidence to be able to have those conversations with landlords. And landlords then build trust in that person and know that they've received good information that's honest, it's transparent. And they know that they can then speak to that person again in the future. In addition to that, then we're obviously we have been running some fairly big projects across the business. We've got the day-to-day kind of lettings process, the property management, the boxes that we tick as part of our terms of business for a landlord. But outside of that, and one of the biggest parts of my role over the last kind of 12 to 18 months has been looking at how we can better protect landlords. And I think, rent guarantee, it's always
I was
two
gonna
words.
say.
Yeah, rent guarantee.
Two words that have to come out in any of my videos, because I'm just such a big believer in landlords having that ultimate protection and peace of mind. We've touched on it before in previous podcasts. Josh has just mentioned it now. Landlords are busy working. They've got children. They've got pets. They've got, lives.
Yeah.
And so a lot of landlords don't have the time to do it themselves. And in some cases, they just want to employ an agent so they know that things are done properly. But as part of our managed service, the rent guarantee and legal expenses cover is something that can be taken as an additional service, because it does offer that ultimate protection. So the rent guarantee, I think, has always been a big part of it for me, because most landlords have costs. They have expenses, whether that is mortgage, insurance, whether it's repairs on the property, a new boiler that might be needed, just those things that you don't quite prepare for. So to then not have the rent coming in it's a really big thing, and it can have a really big impact on landlords, not just financially, but also then, emotionally, because it causes a lot of stress, a lot of worry. But I think more important than ever is the legal expenses side of that cover that comes hand in hand with the rent guarantee service, because with the renters' rights bill that is looming, obviously notice periods are going to be longer. Section 21 is being abolished. Fixed terms will be no more. And I think for landlords who do need to get vacant possession for whatever reason that may be, it may be for a tenancy breach, it may be because they need to sell, it may be because they need to utilise the property for themselves or a family member. But regardless of the situation, getting vacant possession could become more difficult. There is a concern that the courts are still overloaded, especially in some of the areas that we work within. And so having that legal expenses cover in place, which gives them access to HomeLet's in-house legal team. So they're not working with, a standalone solicitor who's got lots of other different cases on. I mean, yes, of course, these legal experts will have other cases that they're dealing with, but it's all related to vacant possession.
Yeah.
So it's a quicker process is what we're seeing. HomeLet tend to be able to give a quicker turnaround. But the most important part of that is that they're paying for that legal expenses cover as part of that service. So they're not
sort of
losing
belt and braces,
rent,
isn't it, really?
and then having to go and pay a solicitor to be able to
Yeah.
get vacant possession of the property. They're paying what is a maximum of 3% of the monthly rent for that service, to be able to have the peace of mind that the rent is always going to be covered and that they can get vacant possession without having to pay out extortionate legal fees. So we did a video about 6 weeks ago, which talked about the opportunity for our landlords to be able to opt back in to that service if they opted out last year when we ran that project. So, we can understand that lots of landlords had different reasons for opting out of that service. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is down to cost, which again is understood.
Yeah.
But the cost will be far greater if landlords are in a position where the rent is not paid or they need vacant possession and have to pay legal expenses than it is to take out that service. So it's just about that ultimate protection. And I mean, Josh has had a situation just this week, haven't you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a landlord who's £6,000 out of pocket. He's waited 10 months to get possession back. It's a real tough situation for all landlords when that situation happens. I mean, the first thing is the Shannon Bosley Knight do a lot. They do everything they can with the strategy in terms of referencing, the finding of the applicant to minimise the risk. But ultimately, the truth is that we can't take it away, okay? That's when the rent guarantee and legal expenses cover comes in. I mean, I can speak obviously from our branch. We're one of the branches that have done it. We've had a really positive response back to landlords opting back in. Landlords know with the Renters' Rights Bill, it is going to become harder. It's going to become longer. The court system, we could probably go on for hours about because it's a real big problem in our industry. For us to be able to offer that protection to landlords is really, really important. And it's borderline paramount now for these landlords to have this cover, whether that is with us, which we can offer. I mean, it works out actually less than 1 day's rent a month just to have that. And if I said to you, you can have the peace of mind of knowing that your asset is protected by just paying that small little amount of money, then it's really worth it. So
it's sort of like offering the belt and braces, isn't it? cover so that they're completely...
Yeah, and I mean, you just mentioned about having that with us. So there are some landlords that will respond and say, well, I've already got this protection elsewhere. The only, I guess, caveat to that is, the protection might be the same. To our knowledge and from the research we've done, the one offered through HomeLet that is our service that's being offered is the best one that is out there. It covers the full rent for up to 15 months or until vacant possession is granted. It covers legal expenses up to £100,000 and gives the in-house legal team. But then where a landlord has had to make a claim, it also gives them cover of up to 75% of the rent for up to 3 months after the tenant has vacated or vacant possession has been granted, whilst the property is being remarketed. So if the landlord is in a position where the tenant has been evicted or vacant possession has been granted, and they're then remarketing the property but have works to do, they're still receiving 75% of that rent rather than having a void. But the biggest and most important thing about that is that with HomeLet, we can handle the claim for the landlord. So quite often what we experience is a landlord would say, well, this is my insurer, this is who my cover is with, but they won't speak to us. So we're then having to send documentation to the landlord because obviously we've got everything on record. The landlord is then having to send all of that onto their solicitor or the insurance company. And it means that we cannot control or work for the landlord on that claim, which does form part of our managed service. And we do want to be able to do that for landlords because that's part of removing the pressure from them. That's what our managed service is for. It's so that we do the hard work so the landlord doesn't have to. So that is the only kind of tricky situation if a landlord has got cover elsewhere, is it means that if there is a claim, we can very rarely become involved in helping the landlord to move things along. So the busy landlord who's out at work and got children and got pets and all of the other things that we've already mentioned will also be having to receive documents, forward documents, chase things up, get updates, have conversations with the legal team or the insurer. Whereas if it is our service, we can take that pressure and hassle away and do it all for them. So that's another positive with it.
I mean, just on that's a really, really important point. I think we've already done the research into the strength of the policy and how good it is. But I mean, Becky used the word there about other covers that you can get at alternative places. But what will happen is the landlord will be given a form and it's 55, 60 questions long, and they go, well, my agent can deal with it, but they won't deal with the agent. They'll just deal directly with the policy holder. So it's a real headache, and a big hassle. And like Becca said about the timing, about landlords it's already precious as it is. Giving it across to an agent to deal with makes things a lot easier. HomeLet are the people that reference these tenants going in. Okay, that's a really, really important point. They're not there to cause a problem when it comes to activating a rental legal protection policy. They actually want to help and get it sorted as quickly as possible for them. So, really, really important that landlords consider this and make sure that not just when they're looking at their current situation as well, but also their existing policies they've had previously. Do speak to us, speak to your local market expert, and we can work together to sort it for you.
Yeah, I mean, we just encourage any landlord, really, if you've got this cover already and you're comfortable with it, that's fine, but just perhaps double check the terms, make sure that the cover is to a good level. I'd recommend to the level that we offer as a service. And if it isn't, come and have a chat with us. If you don't have the cover already, please come and have a chat with us because we're just really keen to make sure that, as much risk as possible is just alleviated and that you've got the ultimate peace of mind. So that's what this is about. So I will never stop talking about rent guarantee. I'm sure that everybody is sick of hearing it already, but we won't stop talking about rent guarantee and the importance of it.
And the other importance, I suppose, is deposit alternative scheme. And that's another way that we're helping our landlords and tenants, isn't it?
Yeah, so obviously we had Colette from Flatfare on the podcast with us a few months ago. So Flatfare is the chosen deposit alternative that we decided to partner with. We started offering Flatfare back in February. It can only be offered to our fully managed landlords. So if you are a landlord that has a tenant fine service, unfortunately, it's not a service that we can offer to you. But for fully managed, it is now a case of when we're instructed on a property or we're reletting a property, we are offering that property with a deposit alternative. The tenant then has to choose whether they want to go ahead with the traditional deposit, which is 5 weeks rent, or whether they want to opt and have flat fare as a deposit alternative, and they then pay the cost for having that deposit alternative in place, which, so, you know, for a landlord, it's giving them double protection because it's up to 10 weeks of the rent rather than the 5-week traditional deposit. But for tenants, it's reducing their upfront moving costs because they don't have to find a 5-week deposit. Instead, they're paying what is just under 30% of the month's rent. So it's saving them over 70% of their what would be their deposit costs before they move into the property. So you're offering that in branch.
Yeah, it's been a good uptake really. I think it's important for landlords to remember that there's a lot of costs for not just themselves but also for tenants when moving in. I've got friends and family who rent properties and they have to buy new sofas and new beds, etc. when moving. So any sort of saving they can make when moving in is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And it's not like these tenants can't afford it because we reference them. We know they can afford the property to rent. So, and you can still take out rent guarantee and rent legal protection on that. So it is just simply the case of being able to help tenants in terms of that moving cost they initially move in. But also on the flip side, like Becca said, double the protection, okay, with landlords. I mean, we're capped at 5 weeks for the traditional deposit. Flat fare's a bit more. So, yeah, let's keep offering that. Landlords have become more and more open to that. And, do speak to your branch manager about it. And if you've got any questions or queries in regard to the flat fare deposit alternative. So.
Yeah, and one of the good things there as well is that flat fare also work in partnership with HomeLet. So flat fare will only offer the tenant the option of the deposit alternative if they've got acceptable references from HomeLet. So once they've gone through HomeLet's process, they're happy and satisfied that they can offer that protection.
Yeah.
Obviously, Josh has mentioned, you know, the furniture and all of the things that you have to buy when you are moving house. But I think in some cases it's as simple as this tenant is moving from one rental property to another. The deposit on that property is tied up until they've vacated, returned the keys, potentially had a checkout inspection carried out, you know, any deposit negotiations looked at and agreed. So they could be 2 weeks into a new tenancy before the deposit deductions or, you know, the deposit release is all sorted out on the property over here. So to have to try and find 5 weeks rent again to move into another property when this is already in a deposit scheme here, it's you know, quite a big ask. So this does just reduce the tenant's moving costs as well as offering the landlords that double protection. So again, something that we're a big fan of, but it is about protecting our landlords and just trying to ease the pressure a bit for tenants.
Yeah. And so, as well as all of that, you're obviously in regular contact with them. We've got Landlord Times podcasts and things, and you've got a landlord event coming up in September, which you're really hopeful that will be not only well attended, but you've got some great speakers coming, and you know, and that's going to be really important for landlords to attend because you know it's just a great sort of
everything that we're
evening.
doing at the moment is around educating landlords and making sure they're kept informed. What we don't want is, you know, this big kind of break of silence and then here's the renters' rights bill and this is what you've got to deal with. So the purpose of us doing our regular updates has been to give the landlords, you know, updates in bite-sized chunks, keeping them informed every step of the way when we know of something new. Obviously, the Landlord Times does go out monthly and that's a massive help. The Landlord and Investors Evening, which Josh is actually heading up.
It's going to be good.
It's Sheldon Bosley Knight's first event, and we're really, really excited about that. And we will be recording another podcast to give more information about it.
Yeah, I think as a lettings team, what we really saw was that we asked ourselves what the landlords want, and speaking to our landlords in branches, we found that a lot of key things they wanted to know about was legislation updates. Obviously, the Renters' Rights Bill we've spoken about. The current market has obviously changed a lot the last 5-6 years. We're probably going to go for another period of change now, and also buy-to-let investments. So between those three words, what we've done is then we've created this fantastic event. It's our first one, as Becca said, which will hopefully give landlords everything they need to know in terms of the current rental market and what the plans are going forward. So yeah, September the 18th is the day, so please make sure you can come along if possible.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both very much for coming in to talk to me again today, and thank you again for watching. We'll see you again next time.